So let's come back to our kind heart. And sometimes when we try and come back to our kind heart, we find some painful memory there interfering. And to be able to look at that and say, yes, that situation happened in the past. Yes, I experienced pain. However, that's in the past. It's not happening right now. I'm not going to carry that pain and that memory around with me, like a ton of bricks in a backpack that I lug around my whole life, that weighs me down and breaks my back. Rather, I'm just going to acknowledge that it happened, acknowledge the feeling, and then acknowledge that it's in the past, it's not happening now. And so in that way, come to a heart of forgiveness, a heart of acceptance. And with that space, then we can generate our good motivation and go into the future with a really different kind of attitude and feeling and intention. And so let's do that now and really make our intention one of making our life meaningful and valuable. And the best way to do that is to be of the greatest benefit to all beings. And the best way to do that is to gain the skills and abilities of a fully enlightened one. So that's our long-term motivation. And for that reason, we're learning and sharing the Dharma today. So I think it's really important that we learn to recognize the past, as that which has arisen and ceased, and the future as the future, that which has not yet arisen. Okay. And in watching people, one of my theories, this is part metaphorical, part not. Oh, no, it's on. Maybe the battery's dead?
It's going now. Maybe the battery's dying.
That could be, because the light's no longer shining when...
It only shines
when I click it on. It only shines when it is going, it's not shining.
No, when it's needing changing, is my understanding of it.
Oh.
It's a pretty new battery. It's going now?
It's going now. Maybe I'll just put a new one after.
Okay, or just check periodically. So part of my thing, I think this is kind of half metaphorical, half not, is one reason that old people get bent over is because they carry their pain accumulated throughout a lifetime with them. And they carry their bitterness with them. So we often react to pain with hurt. It turns into anger, grudge holding, and in the end it just calcifies into bitterness. And that weighs a lot, you know? And we get bent over carrying the load of our pain and bitterness. I'm sure you've met older people like that. You might even have met younger people like that, you know? And this is why I think forgiveness is so important. And while really recognizing that, we're not blocking out the pain and saying there wasn't any. We're saying, yes, there was pain. However, it's not happening now. And I'm not going to freeze whatever happened in the past and make it some frozen thing in a 2-ton ice cube that I put on my back and carry around with me. Yeah. Because you know how we have memories of the past, and they're frozen, aren't they? Just frozen. This happened, I felt this. They're frozen. There's no movement in them, just frozen.
What about the weight? Is it same thing, the weight?
Yeah.
It's frozen stuff?
It's frozen, and when something's frozen, when water's frozen, it weighs more. Doesn't it? Yeah. So it's like that, and we carry it around with us. So there's some image in our mind of something that happened, how we felt, and it's frozen, and we just carry it around, and it becomes a major influence on that veil through which we look at the world. And we often aren't even aware of how we're carrying it around, or how much it is becoming the veil through which we see the world. Okay? But if we think about it, no moment is frozen, is it? Yeah. We had that teaching, remember, previous Thursday night about impermanence, and everything's changing like this. It can't last another moment, even if we tried to make it. That by its very nature, it's arising and ceasing at the same time. And so like that, any painful moment we experienced arised and ceased, arise and cease, arise and cease, and is no longer existing at this moment. It's in the past. It's no longer happening. Okay? And so in that way, really acknowledging that at a very deep level, and then being able to look at what happened in the past and forgive the other people, forgive ourselves, and then purify the whole thing. One thing that I often do in those kind of frozen, painful moments, which, make me feel like it's just all hopeless, this is not going to change, which is, of course, ridiculous, because it already has changed. But what I do is I'll take the Buddha, or Chenrezig, or Manjushri, or, one of the Buddhas, Tara often, and, that frozen image I have of that situation, I put them right there in the image. Yeah. And I'll put that particular Buddha, sometimes it's just one of them and they're radiating light out to everybody in the situation. Sometimes I imagine that Buddha on the head of every person in the situation, and then say the mantra and imagine the light from the Buddha coming down and purifying all of us, and purifying the whole environment. Because if you just imagine you and the other people getting purified, but the environment is still the same, that doesn't work. So you have to, send the Buddha's light into the whole environment and purify the whole thing. Okay. Now, somebody could say, what's all this visualization about? This is just like Mickey Mouse, kinda. It's not happening. What are you talking about? Yeah, that's like visualizing Mickey Mouse coming in here and entertaining us. The Buddha's not there. You're just doing make-believe. Well, Lama Yeshe, when we raised this question to him, he was say things such as, you know, when you've taken a moment in the past and frozen it according to the interpretation of your deluded mind, isn't that make-believe? Isn't that not reality? Think about it. You know, because is our memory trustworthy? Or have we picked out certain things, you know, and put them together and calcified the situation into something? Isn't that make-believe? Make-believe, isn't it? It's not what really happened. When we start dreaming, or sometimes we go in the past, or sometimes the future, you know, like when you first fall in love. You remember that? And it's like, you know, you remember that. And again, it's frozen in time, isn't it? You have these scenes from falling in love. They're just frozen in time. And again, too, there we've picked out certain details, exaggerated them a little bit, made the person, you know, 100% perfect, solidified the whole thing, made it impermanent, made it permanent, eternal, and meditate upon it daily. Isn't that make-believe? When you try and recreate that experience again in the future, you know, because you can't hold on to that from the past, you know, eventually their dirty socks show up. Not to mention everything else. But then, you know, you still want to recreate it in the future, you know, this perfect person. Go to the beach. And I'm like this. I'm going to be this perfect person I've always wanted to be. With the perfect person I've always wanted to be with. You know these dreams? Yeah. They come in our meditation a lot. They're called distraction. But we can go on in these dreams forever. We just, you know, take something in the past and project it in the future. So wonderful. There we are. He said this, and I said that. Yeah. Isn't that make-believe? Isn't that visualization? Okay. So which is more unrealistic? Yeah. Our perfect romantic, whatever it is. Yeah. Or the Buddha being there to guide us on the path. Which is more real, which is more unreal? Is there a Buddha who's guiding you on the path?
Yes.
Yeah. When you visualize that Buddha in the space in front of you, is that make-believe?
Sure, you're trying to make yourself believe it.
In that sense it is, you know, because we don't completely feel that there's a Buddha guiding us on the path, you know. But when we visualize the Buddha and bring the Buddha into our life, then we're giving the Buddha the space to actually guide us on the path. Does that make-believe? Yeah. When you're having your total 3D fantasy of the perfect romantic relationship, is that make-believe? Yeah. When you're remembering a painful event in the past that's frozen, you know, in time, completely solid and heavy like a ton of weight, isn't that make-believe? Okay? So, imagining the Buddha going into that experience in the past, maybe the Buddha was there all the time. We were just too involved in our ignorance, anger, and attachment to recognize it. Yeah. And so imagining the Buddha purifying the entire situation, and purifying us, and purifying everybody in the situation. Yeah. Isn't that something that could maybe make your mind a little bit more realistic and get you out of that frozen past and get you out of the make-believe future? Yeah?
Definitely.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay, so this, I think, is a very valuable kind of technique to use. When we're stuck in the past, Buddha's there. Purify the whole situation, purify us, purify everybody else, because our memory, our interpretation, is one of delusion. So let's transform it. And so when you bring the Buddha and visualize the Buddha in your frozen situation in the past, you're bringing compassion into the past. Into your memory, into your mind now. You're bringing compassion in. And here's everybody in that situation that we remember as so painful. But isn't everybody in that situation there because of his or her own karma and their own conditioning? And aren't they trapped by their karma and their afflictions? Just as we were trapped in that situation by our karma and afflictions. Yeah? And so then you bring the Buddha there, and the Buddha has compassion. And we make compassion flow through the whole situation. And flow through us, flow through all the other people. And so we imagine everybody in that horrendous situation relaxing. Relaxing and coming back to a compassionate mind. Coming back to a bright and clear mind. Okay? So this is a very good way to unfreeze things from the past. And really see that everybody that we thought was like this horrible enemy was trapped by their own afflictions and karma. That was their conditioning that got them there. That was our conditioning that got us there. And so to think of purifying all of that. Putting compassion in. So that's like going and talking to the skeleton. Yeah. Except you go now to talk to the skeleton, and it's become, this nice, compassionate person. Okay? And when your mind goes into the past with the great thing that happened in the past, and you try and recreate it in the future with your fantasy, love affair like they make in the movies, then remember, that's a fantasy love affair like they make in the movies. That's all it is my visualization. Yeah. And that I'm never going to meet that perfect, wonderful, fantastic person. And I'm never going to be my image of this perfect person that I've always wanted to be. And the situation is never, ever going to be perfect. So might as well drop the whole thing. Yeah? Because especially when we're thinking of this perfect person that we want to be. And I'm using the example of a love affair because it's really easy to see. But, your thing could be, going up the corporate ladder or, whatever it is that you're dreaming about in the future. becoming this great Geshe, that everybody bows down to, and, whatever your, is. And just, say, I'm even projecting this image of this perfect me who I think I should be, who I've always wanted to be. And I'm not going to be that person. And you know what? It's just as well. Isn't it? It's just as well that I'm never going to be this fantasy person. Because that fantasy person has a lot of arrogance. Yeah. Isn't it? This perfect me, I'm going to become what I've always wanted to be. And here's, we've been talking about our images, how men are raised, how women are raised, what we think we're supposed to be. And I'm never going to be that. And you know what? Nobody is that. And it's just as well. It's really just as well. Because that person may not be such the wonderful person that we think he or she is going to be. A little bit of ego involved there. Okay? So that way then we can come back to self-acceptance, and come back to our potential. Now somebody's going to say, but what about those times when you visualize yourself as the Buddha? Isn't that just as unrealistic as visualizing yourself as this perfect man, woman, whatever you think you should be? Isn't that just as unrealistic? No. Okay. Because one day you will become a Buddha. You never will become that image of the perfect samsaric being. That doesn't exist. But one day you will become a Buddha. And so when we do that visualization of ourselves as the Buddha, what we're doing is reminding ourselves that we have the potential to become a fully enlightened being. Okay? And when we imagine ourselves as a fully enlightened being, then we might start to actually act in a way that's a little bit more enlightened. A fully awake being, even we imagine ourselves to be fully awake, then we start acting a little bit more awake. Because remember when we were kids, we used to play dress up and pretend to be all sorts of things? Yeah? What did you pretend to be as a kid?
Pirates.
You were a pirate? You weren't a Japanese drummer. Yeah, you pretended to be a pirate, okay?
Nurse.
You pretended to be a nurse, and you became a nurse.
I know, it's weird.
A teacher. I had all my crowd in front of me and was teaching.
No, you were a teacher.
Dolphin.
A dolphin? You're going to grow up to be a dolphin?
I wish I could do that.
You have to grow some fins.
A jockey.
Huh?
A jockey.
A jockey?
Like a riding horse.
Really? That's what you were?
Ballerinas.
Huh?
Ballerinas.
A ballerina? Jenny the ballerina.
Doesn't it make sense?
We used to dress up and pretend either that we were like the priest giving out communion or that we were the Beatles. Next day we had our Eucharist.
So we all had these things as kids that we dressed up and we pretended to be. And, only when you can imagine yourself being that, can you become that. If you can't imagine yourself being that, then you're never going to become it. Okay? Yeah. So we imagine ourselves as a fully awakened being. And in that way we set our energy in that direction to go about becoming a fully awakened being. Yeah. She wanted to be a pirate.
Well, because it was a boat, and we could sail to islands and discover new things.
Oh.
I was the robbing kind.
Oh, okay. I thought pirates by definition robbed.
Well, this pirate didn't.
A compassionate pirate.
Oh, yeah.
Okay.
Stupid.
Okay, so we imagine ourselves to be, this compassionate, wise being who can meet every situation with equanimity and kindness. Yeah, what a nice visualization to have of ourselves. Because so much of our present visualization, Lama used to really get into it. He said, your present visualization, he didn't use the word self-image, but, visualization, and it is a visualization. I mean, he was spot on. Your visualization is poor quality me. You have poor quality visualization, dear. Because he called everybody dear. Dear, you are poor. He couldn't say, so, no, it was F's he couldn't say well. Yeah, he could say P's. Yeah, because he couldn't say fantastic, it came out as pantastic. Okay. But you have totally poor quality visualization. That's rubbish. 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 And it's true. Completely true. I mean, he could have gone into a lot of philosophical things and, the way the mind works and this mental factor and that and, the whole logical syllogism. But Lama just got to the core, This is rubbish. This is not who you are. This is not how you exist. It's make-believe. Yeah. And it is. Yeah. So there's this self-image that we so often just drag around with ourselves. Yeah. Just really rubbish. But imagining ourselves as a fully compassionate being, why not? That's not rubbish. I mean, that's what we want to become. So we dress up. Yeah? And so that's the reason when you're doing these things. You imagine yourself as a deity. You imagine being kind. You imagine radiating light to others. Yeah. And we imagine, there's Buddhas all around us. Because the Buddha's mind is omniscient, so, Buddha's awareness is here. We're just, making it appear in a physical form, but the Buddha's awareness is here. And we can tap into it any time, any place. Okay? So the thing is, when we're tapping into the Buddha's energy, is so much of our practice is about making ourselves a receptive vehicle or a receptive vessel. Okay, so they say that the Buddha's inspiration is like the sun. You can see the sun. It shines everywhere. The sun does not discriminate where it shines. It shines everywhere. But if the bowl's upside down, the sunlight can't get in it. The sun's shining everywhere. The bowl's upside down, the sun can't come in. So that's like our mind when we're completely enveloped, in carrying around our hurt, imagining these, fantastic scenes of attachment and desire in the future, when we're just basically obscured, then we're like the upside down bowl. The sunlight shining, none of it comes in. So a lot of our practice, what we're doing, and already just by the fact that we're here today, interested in the Dharma, doing our practice, is we're starting to take that bowl and go like this. And every little bit higher that the bowl gets, more sunshine comes in. Yeah. And more sunshine comes in. And then, eventually, there it is. Okay? So, when we're a bowl like that, imagining the sunshine coming and filling us is not unrealistic. Because one day that's actually what will happen, and we have the potential for that to happen. And the more we imagine the sunshine coming in, the more the bowl starts to turn upright. Yeah. The more we stay stuck with, they did this to me, and that happened to me, nobody loves me, woe is me, and I'm such an obnoxious person, I did everything wrong, I can't see things clearly, this is awful, I'm a failure. Yeah, then that's what's happening. Okay, so we're trying to change the way we think and make it into this upright bowl. Yeah. So when we visualize the Buddha, it's not make-believe. When we visualize the Buddha and we tell the Buddha what's in our hearts, it's not make-believe. You communicate directly with the Buddha, because the Buddha is also your internal Buddha that you're going to become. Yeah. So you say what's in your heart to the Buddha. And the Buddha's, the Buddha's just sitting there so peacefully. Or like Chenrezig, like this, and 1,000 arms, So Chenrezig's not going to take, one of those arms and go, "You idiot! Confess!" That's not what's going to happen. Chenrezig has all those 1,000 arms, and so we confess our whole thing and say our whole thing, and then Chenrezig comes and gives us a big hug with all 1,000 arms. Yeah. So there's complete, when we say what's in our heart to the Buddha, there's complete acceptance from the part of the Buddha. There's not any judgment. And that's why the Buddhas are looking at us with those incredible compassionate eyes. Yeah. And that's why I think it's important when we do a visualization that we really, spend some time thinking of the Buddha's face and that expression on the Buddha's face. Because I did this visualization for a long time, and then I realized that I never spent much time on the face, I got the basic shape and everything, but I didn't spend much time on the expression because I couldn't imagine anybody looking at me with total acceptance. Why? Because I couldn't accept myself. Yeah. When I started imagining the Buddha looking at me with those incredibly accepting eyes, it showed that I had already gotten to some point of starting to accept myself. And when I thought of the Buddha accepting me, then that really helped me. It's like, I really don't need to make such a big deal out of all my boo-boos. I need to confess them. I need to purify. There's the 4-point, the four opponent powers to do that. There's a method to do that. I don't need to carry all this stuff around. Yeah. And sit there and flagellate myself with the, what did they use? Huh?
Cat of nine tails.
What's a cat
It's
of
a
nine?
leather strap that I think had 9 tails.
Branches to it.
Oh my goodness.
Made out of leather.
Like 9.
And it had knots in it.
It had knots in it.
Yeah, 9 whips.
Well, definitely we don't need to beat ourselves up with that. That hurts. Yeah. A cat of 9 tails.
The handle cord with all these leather straps with knots in them.
Nasty. Yeah. So we don't need to do that. Because there is the Buddha looking at us with 100% acceptance and compassion. And so we can look at ourselves that way and say, yes, I made that mistake. Yes, I did that. And I have a lot of regret. But I don't have any guilt, and I don't have any shame. And my regret is my motivation to do the purification practice. And what's incredible about Buddha's purification practice is when you come to the fourth opponent power, the remedial action, one of them is to imagine the Buddha, from the Buddha into you, flowing this blissful wisdom light. So we grew up in a culture where we feel the guiltier I feel, the more I beat myself up with this mental cat of 9 tails, the more I'm purified. That's the way our culture is, isn't it? The worse I feel, the more I feel like a sinner and unworthy, the more I'm purified. Yeah, I'm atoning. For all the harm I did others, I am now going to cause that same harm and more to myself, and feel lousy about this from now until eternity. Lama would look and say, that's rubbish, dear. Where did you get that idea? You have the Buddha nature. Why on earth would you think that you're, eternally damned and evil? Rubbish. Yeah. But it's true, isn't it? We're not eternally damned and evil and horrible and like that. So we have regret. We make a determination not to do it again. We take refuge and generate bodhicitta, so we transform our attitude. And then we imagine the Buddha with all this, flow, and all this light flowing into us. And we're completely purified. And, you take the situations and the Buddha's in them and purifies everybody in the situation, purifies the whole environment. Okay. Questions, comments?
Well, could you just say the 4 practices again for purification?
Okay. Well, the first one is regret. Okay. So not guilt. Guilt and regret are 2 very, very different things. Regret is, I made a mistake. I'm sorry. Guilt is, culpa mia! I'm horrible! I'm a disaster! I'm unlovable! I'm unforgivable! This is terrible! You want me to go on? I'm good at this one.
Quite clear.
I told you Jewish guilt is like, we got you Catholics beat. Okay. So, regret. Yeah. And then, what I call restoring the relationship. So when we've done negative actions, harmful actions, it's usually been with a negative intention towards either holy beings or sentient beings. We don't create so much, negative karma in relationship to inanimate objects. Okay, computers, ETAP.
Yes.
So if you go downstairs and you see there 2 computers thrown across the floor. Okay, so it's usually with sentient beings. So to restore a good relationship in our own heart with them, then with sentient beings, then we generate love and compassion and bodhicitta. Yeah, so towards whoever we harmed, instead of holding on to that hatred and grudge and bitterness, we meditate on love and fortitude and compassion and bodhicitta. And then whenever we've done anything harmful against the holy beings, then we meditate on refuge. And so that restores, we take refuge in them as our spiritual guides. And so that restores the relationship in the sense of our own heart now is clear. And we have a positive attitude towards whoever it was that we harmed. So that's the second one. Third one is making a determination not to do the action again. So there's some things in our life that we can look at and say, I will never do that again. That was just too much what I did. I never will do that again. There's other things where, like gossip, where we can't actually say I'm never going to do it again. So it would be nice if we said I'm never going to do it. But so there, in those cases, what we do is we say either I'm going to try my best never to do it again, or for the next 2 days, I'm going to be really, really careful and not do that action again. And then you extend it to 3 days and 4 days. You give yourself a time period, to be really attentive and mindful about it. Okay, so that's the third one, the determination not to do it again. And then the fourth one is the remedial action. Okay, so the remedial action, one of them is the 35 Buddhas that you're doing. Okay, so you're thinking of the good qualities of the holy beings and showing respect to them. Yeah, I guess in the military you salute. Yes, sir. In Buddhism, you bow. Okay, you show your respect by bowing. I think a salute is more just than respect. It's sometimes fear and hierarchy. What?
It's a lot of things.
Yeah, it's a lot of things. So, but bowing is, I really respect these qualities of the Buddha. So we bow. Okay, Vajrasattva. Yeah, where we imagine Vajrasattva on our head. Vajrasattva, and light pouring down. That's the retreat we're doing this winter. Yeah, purification. Also meditating on emptiness, meditating on bodhicitta. Those are also powerful purification practices. Being generous, making offerings. Yeah. Like one of the purification practices, one of the ones we do is the offering bowls, the mandala offering. Being generous in society with your time and energy and giving. Doing community service, helping the poor. The hospice, people are hospice volunteers. Yeah. So any kind of community service that you're doing. Offering service at a temple or a monastery or a dharma center. Where we're really, so this is why we call it offering service here at the Abbey. Okay, so when you're, painting, when you're staining the side of the building, you're offering service. It can be part of this fourth opponent power. Yeah, when you're schlepping wood, when you're pulling knapweed, all these things. It's, because there's a change in our mind, a change in our attitude. And when we're offering service, we're contributing to something that is bigger than ourselves. And we're contributing to the benefit of others in a direct way. Okay? So there's many different kinds of Dharma practices that you can do for purification, but you try and do all of them with these four opponent powers. Even you're doing the Chenresi practice or Manjushri or any of those, you can just put the four opponent powers in them, and then your visualization is, that fourth opponent power. But in those practices, when you take refuge and generate bodhicitta at the beginning, that's the second one. So you already have two of them. Might as well put in the other two. Okay? Other questions or comments? So that was the introduction, and there's 5 more minutes left. Lori just said yesterday she thought, what did she say, that Rinpoche would be just smiling at. Okay, so the actual topic that we were going to do today was after the Buddha attained enlightenment, he started to wonder, can I teach this Dharma to anybody? Can I teach? Okay, so the passage says, I have heard that on one occasion, when the Blessed One was newly self-awakened, he was staying at Uruvela on the bank of the Narayana River, at the foot of the goatherd's banyan tree. Then, when he was alone and in seclusion, this line of thinking arose in his awareness. This Dharma that I have attained is deep, hard to see, hard to realize, peaceful, refined, beyond the scope of conjecture, subtle, to be experienced by the wise. But this generation delights in attachment, is excited by attachment, enjoys attachment. For a generation delighting in attachment, excited by attachment, enjoying attachment, this conditionality and dependent arising are hard to see. This state too is hard to see. The resolution of all karmic formations, the relinquishment of all acquisitions, the ending of craving, dispassion, cessation, unconditioned. And if I were to teach the Dharma, and if others would not understand me, that would be tiresome for me, troublesome for me. Okay. So the Buddha attained this incredible state of awakening. And then he's saying, who else in this world is going to get it? They're all running around chasing their objects of attachment. They're all living in their fairyland, Peter Pan land, Disneyland, chasing their objects of attachment. Nobody in the world is going to understand what in the world I'm talking about because their minds are distracted elsewhere. So how can they understand dependent arising? How can they understand nirvana? Impossible. Just as these verses, unspoken in the past, unheard before, occurred to the Blessed One, enough now with teaching that only with difficulty I reached. This Dharma is not easily realized by those overcome with aversion and passion. So he's saying, enough now. I've spent so much difficulty. I gained this enlightenment. It's not easy to realize by those over whose minds are overwhelmed by attachment and anger. So basta finito. What is abstruse, subtle, deep, hard to see, going against the flow, those delighting in passion, cloaked in the mass of darkness, won't see. So people whose minds are just shrouded by ignorance, they're not going to see what's going against the flow, what actually exists. As the Blessed One reflected thus, his mind inclined towards dwelling at ease, not to teaching the Dharma. Then the Brahma, Sahampati, so the Brahma, there's different Brahmas in the form realm, and so this is one particular Brahma, Sahampati. I think he's also called Sakra. Okay, so this Brahma, he's still a worldly being. Okay, he's actually a Hindu god. But, the Buddhists were very skillful. They just incorporated the Hindu cosmology into their worldview. Okay, so this Brahma, having known with his awareness the line of thinking in the Blessed One's mind, thought, the world is lost, the world is destroyed. The mind of the Tathagata, the Arhat, the rightly self-awakened one, inclines to dwelling at ease, not to teaching the Dharma. So this Brahma is essentially going, double what? Okay. Then just as a strong man might extend his flexed arm or flex his extended arm, Brahma Sahampati disappeared from the Brahma world and reappeared in front of the Blessed One. Arranging his upper robe over one shoulder, he knelt down with his right knee on the ground, saluted the Buddha with his hands before his heart, and said to him, Lord, let the Blessed One teach the Dharma. Let the one well gone teach the Dharma. There are beings with little dust in their eyes who are falling away because they do not hear the Dharma. There will be those who will understand the Dharma. I find that so moving, that this one Brahma, had some compassion for not only the people at the time of the Buddha, but all of us who were going to come afterwards, and approached the Buddha and requested him to teach.
Explain again, what is the Brahma? Was he a life being or is it?
He's one of the beings in the celestial realm, in the Brahma realm, and he came and appeared as a human being. Okay. And arranged his robe and knelt down and then made the request. Okay. Now the question may say, well, wait a minute, the Buddha's fully enlightened. Did he really think not to teach? Doesn't that sound like the Buddha lacks fortitude and enthusiastic energy? I think that this is something that was done to make the point to us beings. I don't think the Buddha was really having that kind of doubt. That doesn't fit in with who the Buddha is. But, by having the story be like this, and then having Brahma, who is one of the most, this particular Brahma, who is a very exalted samsaric being, it would be like, Obama and Cameron and Putin and Gaddafi and Saddam Hussein and everybody, well, I don't know. Well, we'll pretend. All these people with worldly power going and asking His Holiness to teach. Wouldn't that be quite a visualization? Can you imagine it? All these people with so much world power, and going and kneeling down and asking His Holiness to teach. Some kind of transformation going on in their minds. Okay? So it's kind of like that, telling the story in this way. Here's a worldly powerful being who's really recognizing the supremacy of the Buddha and what the Buddha has to offer. Okay? And saying that there's some with little dust in their eyes. There's some beings who are not that ignorant. Okay? Then the Blessed One, having understood Brahma's invitation, out of compassion for beings, surveyed the world with the eyes of an awakened one. As he did so, he saw beings with little dust in their eyes, and those with much dust, those with keen faculties and those with dull faculties, those with good attributes and those with bad, those easy to teach and those hard to teach. Some of them seeing disgrace and danger in the world. Just as a pond of blue or red or white lotuses, some lotuses, born and growing in the water, might flourish while immersed in the water, without rising up from the water. Some might stand at an even level with the water, while some might rise up from the water and stand without being smeared by the water. So too, surveying the world with the eye of an awakened one, the Blessed One saw beings with little dust in their eyes, and those with much, those with keen faculties and those with dull, those with good attributes and those with bad, those easy to teach and those hard, some of them seeing disgrace and danger in the world. Disgrace isn't such a good word here, but, seeing samsara as dangerous. Okay. And then the Brahma Samanpati, thinking the Blessed One has given his consent to teach the Dharma, bowed down to the Blessed One, and circling him on the right, disappeared right there. And went back to the Brahma. So the Buddha started surveying the world, and he saw that there's all different sorts of beings. So just as, in a pond of lotuses, some lotuses just stay in the mud. They're growing the best they can, but they can't get out of the mud. Some of them, come to the top of the surface, but they can't rise above. Then the bodhisattvas grow out of the mud, and yet they're unstained by the mud. Okay? So too, some people, we're just kind of, still in the water, Then some of us get to, the level of the water, and then some of us get to, out of the water. So it's like that too, the way the Buddha, looks at all of us sentient beings. And we have different levels and different interests and different dispositions. And that's why the Buddha gave 84,000 teachings. Yeah, because people have different dispositions and interests. And so he taught things, something that's going to be of interest and accords with the disposition of everybody. Okay, and that makes him a real skillful teacher. The Buddha didn't say my way or the highway. Okay, he adapted the teachings according to the capabilities of his listeners. Okay, so having thought this, then the Buddha changed his mind and he decided to go teach. So then he wonders, shall I go on? Yeah, then he wonders, who shall I teach? Who am I going to go teach? Okay. So here he is, he's still in Uruvela. And then when the Buddha was alone and in seclusion, this line of thinking arose in his awareness. This Dharma that I have attained is deep, hard to see, hard to realize, peaceful, refined, beyond the scope of conjecture, subtle to be experienced by the wise. And this whole thing, but this generation delights in attachment, is excited by attachment, enjoys attachment. For generation delighting in attachment, excited by attachment, enjoying attachment, this conditionality and dependent arising are hard to see. This state too is hard to see, the resolution of all karmic formations, the relinquishment of all acquisitions, the end of craving, dispassion, cessation, the unconditioned. And if I were to teach the Dharma, and if others would not understand me, that would be tiresome for me. Wait, that's what I just read. Sorry. I told you I found that very moving. Okay, so here's the next scene. Sorry. Then the thought occurred to me, the Buddha speaking at this point. To whom shall I teach the Dharma first? Who will quickly understand this Dharma? Then the thought occurred to me, this Alara Kamala is wise, competent, intelligent. He has long had little dust in his eyes. What if I were to teach him the Dharma first? But then this Alara Kamala was his first teacher, before he became a Buddha. But then the Devas came to me and said, Lord, Alara Kamala died 7 days ago. Okay? And so the Buddha thought, a great loss has Alara Kamala suffered. If he had heard this Dharma, he would have quickly understood it. And then the same thing happened. Then he thought of his second teacher, Uddaka Ramaputra. And he thought, I should go teach Uddaka Ramaputra this Dharma, because he has little dust in his eyes. And then the Devas came to the Buddha and said, Uddaka Ramaputra died last night. And the Buddha again thought, what a pity, he would have gotten it. So this means to me, like, while the Dharma is there, don't say mañana and la mañana. While the Buddha wants to teach the Dharma, while the teachings are there and your teacher is there and all the conditions are there, don't say, I'll do it later, because you might die. Okay, but then he thought, he thought of the group of 5 monks who attended to me when I was resolute in exertion. So when he did his various ascetic practices, when he touched his belly button and felt his spine, he had 5 more monks with him at that time. These were the wandering ascetics of his time. And what if I were to teach them the Dharma first? Yeah, makes sense. Help your first 5 friends. And then the thought occurred to me, where are the group of 5 monks staying now? And with the divine eye, purified and surpassing the human, I thought that they were staying near Varanasi in the deer park at Isipatana. So they were at the deer park in Sarnath. Then, having stayed at a ravella as long as I liked, I set out to wander by stages to Varanasi. Upaka the Vijaka, so one layman, who was an Ajivaka, that must have been his clan, saw me on the road between Gaya and the place of awakening, and on seeing me said, clear, my friend, are your faculties, pure your complexion, and bright. On whose account have you gone forth? Who is your teacher? In whose Dharma do you delight? So this layperson said, wow, there's something unusual about you. What's going on? Who are you? Who's your teacher? What do you practice? And when this was said, I replied to Apaka the Jivaka in verses. All vanquishing, all knowing am I, with regard to all things, unadhering. All abandoning, released in the ending of craving, having fully known on my own to whom I should point as my teacher. Question. I have no teacher, and one like me can't be found. In the world with its devas, I have no counterpart. For I am an arhat in the world, I the unexcelled teacher. I alone am rightly self-awakened, cooled am I, unbound. To set rolling the wheel of Dharma, I go to the city of Kasi. In a world become blind, I beat the drum of the deathless. Okay, now you might wonder, why is the Buddha singing his own praises? Yeah, I thought you weren't supposed to do that. Yeah, because there is, one of our root monastic precepts, and if you do this, you completely lose your ordination, is to lie about your spiritual attainments, or to pretend to have achieved something that you haven't. Okay, and even if you have had a spiritual attainment, it's a lesser offense to declare it to somebody. Of course, if you go to your teacher, that's fine. If you're in consultation with your teacher or a very close Dharma friend, that's not breaking this precept. But just to announce it publicly to the world, that's not something you do. So why is the Buddha doing it?
Gotta get the ball rolling somehow.
Yeah, that's it. He has to get the ball rolling somehow. And with this particular person, as you'll see, this particular person is of very dull faculties. So he had to be, quite direct and blunt. Okay? Because listen to what happens to the story. Okay? So this guy, says to the Buddha, "From your claims, my friend, you must be an infinite conqueror. Conquerors are those like me," and then the Buddha replies, "Conquerors are those like me who have reached the end of the defilements. I've conquered all the evil qualities, and so, Upaka, I am a conqueror." He's telling him who he was. And then Upaka, when this was said, Upaka said, "May it be so, my friend." And shaking his head, taking a side road, he left. So, you see why I said this guy was of dull faculties? Here he is, standing in front of the Buddha, and he went, I see there's something special about you, but okay, so be it, bye. Yeah?
Could have been one of us.
Huh?
Could have been one of us.
Yeah, could have been one of us. Okay. Then, wandering by his stages, I arrived at Varanasi at the deer park in Isipatana, to where the group of 5 monks were staying. From afar they saw me coming, and on seeing me they made a pact with one another, saying, "Friends, here comes Gautama the contemplative, living luxuriously." That's because he started eating again. "Straying from his exertion, backsliding into abundance. This lazy good-for-nothing is just pretending to be a monastic. He doesn't deserve to be bowed down to be greeted by standing up, or to have his robe and bowl received." This is the kind of common courtesy that the juniors would give to the seniors. "Still, a seat should be set out. If he wants, he can sit on it." Okay, so these are his 5 friends. Here the Buddha's walking towards you, and you're going, "Oh, this guy's such a softy. We're not going to take his bowl and his robe, but we'll offer him a seat. He can sit here if he wants to." But as I approached, this is the Buddha speaking, they were unable to keep to their pact. One, standing up to greet me, received my robe and bowl. Another spread out a seat. Another set out water for washing my feet. However, they addressed me by my name and as friend. So even though they said, this guy's nothing special, they found themselves just by his presence showing him respect. Okay. However, they still called him friend because they were all practicing together before and saw him as an equal. So then I said to him, "Don't address the Tathagata by name and as friend. The Tathagata, friends, is a worthy one, rightly self-awakened. Lend ear, friends, the deathless has been attained. I will instruct you. I will teach you the Dharma. Practice as instructed. You will in no time reach and remain in the supreme goal of the holy life, for which clansmen rightly go forth from home into homelessness, knowing and realizing it for yourself in the here and now." Okay. When this was said, the group of 5 monks replied to me, "By that practice, that conduct, that performance of austerities, you did not attain any superior human states, any distinction in knowledge and vision worthy of the Noble One. So how can you now, living luxuriously, straying from your exertion, backsliding into abundance, have attained any superior human states, any distinction in knowledge and vision worthy of the Noble One? So they're still stuck in their old way of thinking that you have to torture the body to get anywhere. And since, hey buddy, you're not torturing your body, you're, living in Beverly Hills, what do you think you've accomplished? When this was said, I replied to them, the Tathagata monks is not living luxuriously, has not strayed from his exertion, has not backslid into abundance. The Tathagata, friends, is a worthy one, rightly self-awakened. Lend ear, friends, the deathless has been attained. I will instruct you, I will teach you the Dharma. Practice as instructed, you will in no long time reach and remain in the supreme goal of the holy life, for which clansmen rightly go forth from home into homelessness, knowing and realizing it for yourself in the here and now. So he's saying, look, it looks like it's luxury and everything, but I haven't strayed from my practice at all. My mind's my mind is not attached to these things, and in addition, I've deepened my practice. But these guys too are a little bit slow, so the Buddha has to repeat it 3 times. Okay. He repeated it 3 times. When this was said, I replied to the group of monks, do you recall my ever having spoken in this way before? No, Lord. They didn't say no, friend. They said no, Lord. Then the Buddha says, the Tathagata monks is not living luxuriously, etc., as before. And so I was able to convince them. Yeah. So, here's the Buddha, completely enlightened, meets one guy on the way who says, well, yeah, that's good, bye. Meets his old 3 friends who say, what a softy. And he has to exert all this energy to say, look, I've done it, trust me. I'll guide you, I'll teach you, trust me. And it took some time to convince them. Okay. And then tomorrow, you'll see what happens. Keep you in suspense. Okay. Any questions or comments?
Why does he refer to himself earlier as an arhat?
As an arhat? Because in the Pali scriptures, also in Mahayana, the Buddha is referred to as an arhat. When in our verse at the beginning, the foe destroyer, the one that's gone, foe destroyer is an arhat. So it means, at that time in the Pali, it means somebody who has been liberated from cyclic existence. Yeah. We would call the Buddha a Mahayana arhat. Okay, let's dedicate. Due to this merit may we soon attain the awakened state of Guru Buddha, that we may be able to liberate all sentient beings from their suffering. May the precious Bodhi mind not yet born arise and grow. May the born have no decline, but increase forevermore.